Welcome. Thank you for attending this technical assistance webinar for the Palatine Foundation of Huntington's Healthy Communities Initiative Spring 2021 application cycle. Our Healthy Communities Initiative is currently open for applications. The purpose of this webinar is to further explain the information provided on our website and on the request for proposals. I will also walk you through the actual application and the information you will be asked to input into our grant management system. My name is Laura Boone, and I am the Foundation's Senior Program Officer. I will be one of your primary contacts on this initiative as it moves forward. Before we begin to go over the grant opportunity, I want to give you a little history about our foundation. After the sale of St. Mary's Medical Center to Cabell Huntington Hospital, the Palatine Missionary Sisters wanted to continue to help serve the health needs of the tri-state community while realizing their service would need to be delivered in a different way now. All over the country, hospitals owned and run by religious communities have been sold, primarily because of the declining number of women choosing to enter religious life and the average age of sisters being well past retirement age. The Palatine Missionary Sisters, as have many orders of sisters, chose to form a foundation called a Hospital Conversion Foundation in order to continue to provide health care to our community. On the slide, you can see all the counties our foundation serves across West Virginia, Kentucky, and Ohio. These counties were included in the foundation footprint because the majority of patients at St. Mary's Medical Center came from these counties. I'd now like to share the mission and vision for our foundation. Take a moment to read through our foundation's vision and mission statements. As you read through them, you can see the sisters' commitment to the health of our community is still very important to them. I'd also like to share the values for our foundation. In selecting grantees and projects to fund, it is very important to us that each organization's work align with our foundation's values. Now let's get started on discussing the Healthy Communities Initiative. On the slide, you will see the key dates for this initiative. The application cycle opens March 1st. In addition to this technical assistance webinar, there's information on the Healthy Communities Initiative page of our website. On that page, you'll also find a link to the request for proposals as well as a PDF document containing the questions that will be asked on the application. This initiative is a one-step application process. You do not need to submit a letter of inquiry prior to applying. All applications must be submitted using our grant management system, which I will walk you through later in the webinar. Requests submitted by mail, email, or any other means will not be accepted. You have until May 31st at 11:45 p.m. to submit your application. I hope no one is working on it that night at 11:40 or even later, but we want to give you as much time as possible on the deadline day. Our foundation board and our staff will then spend April and the first half of May evaluating the proposals. We will notify you of whether your project has been selected by May 24th, 2021. For the projects our board selects for funding, we will then spend the remainder of May working with grantees on finalizing the terms of the grant agreement and other paperwork, with a goal of having the funding to grantees by May 31st, 2021. In thinking through your project ideas, please keep in mind we are looking for projects that can be completed in 1 year period, and that period of project performance is between June 1st, 2021 and May 31st, 2022. You are welcome to reach out to our foundation team at any point before, during, or after the application deadline to discuss project ideas, share additional information, and get questions answered. Jana Stoner and myself are the program officers for the foundation. Our job is to work on outreach to potential grantees and assist grantees with project development and execution. At the very end of this presentation, I will share a slide with our contact information. We do not intend to do site visits with applicants, especially in light of the current public health crisis. However, if your organization is a new applicant to our foundation, or if we have questions about your application, it is likely that we will be in touch after you submit your application to schedule a phone call or send an email with additional questions so that we can ensure we best understand your organization and your project. We have some general eligibility criteria for all organizations that apply. First, you must be an organization with 501c3 status. If you have questions about whether you have the correct tax status, feel free to reach out to us. Your organization must provide health-related programming and services in order to be eligible to apply. We view health as a broad concept encompassing the whole person and their behavioral, emotional, physical, social, and spiritual health. You must deliver services in at least one of the 20 counties in our foundation's service area. Your offices do not have to be located in one of our counties, however. If you are a statewide organization or your organization operates in a region that exceeds our 20 counties, I do encourage you to touch base with us before submitting an application to ensure your project is focused sufficiently on one, some, or all of our counties. In making grant awards, our foundation treats all 20 counties the same. No specific counties receive funding preference. I'd also like to note that our foundation does allow a grantee to have more than one open grant with the foundation at any one time. What that means is if your organization currently has an open grant with our foundation, it will not prevent you from applying for this Healthy Communities initiative. For project eligibility, keep in mind that we will accept only one application per organization. Within a single application, though, you may include funding requests for multiple projects. Your multiple projects can all be health and wellness or all capacity building in focus, or they could be a mix of the two. If you do request funding for multiple projects, please be sure you include information about each project on the application and in the project description question. And the project budget upload ranks the projects in order of priority. It is not uncommon for our foundation to partially fund applications. Your assistance in providing priority ranking of either project topics or budget items, or both, will help us in the event we need to consider partially funding your request. The minimum request level is $3,500, and the maximum amount you can request is $50,000. If you request funding for multiple projects, your total request still must be $50,000 or less. The current opportunity is for projects with two different types of focus: health and wellness related programming projects or organizational capacity building projects. We will discuss what types of activities these kinds of projects might cover in the next couple of slides. The goal of these next few slides is to provide you with a better context of what our foundation includes within the purview of health and wellness projects and capacity building projects. When you visit our website, at the top, you will see a tab that says Focus Areas. Under this tab, you will see pages for both health and wellness and capacity building. Additionally, you will see a tab that says Core Priorities. The Core Priorities tab provides more in-depth information on our foundation's 4 core priorities: food insecurity, mental and behavioral health, substance use disorder, and tobacco use prevention and cessation. For purposes of the Healthy Communities Initiative, which we intend to be our foundation's broadest funding initiative, encompassing the most types of projects, we believe health and wellness comprises these 4 core priorities plus many other project topics related to personal health, disease and injury prevention, health improvements, and enhanced quality of life for individuals, and in turn, communities. So here are a few examples of health and wellness projects that we've funded in the past. We frequently receive requests to support food safety net programming at places like food pantries, senior centers, after-school programs, and school backpack programs. During the current pandemic, we've also seen many of these types of agencies diversify their requests to provide in addition to food, other basic needs, and personal hygiene supplies. We have also received requests for projects that center on nutrition education and learning how to grow and preserve locally grown foods. Our foundation has an increasing interest in the linkages between healthcare and food access sectors to help improve not just the accessibility, but the quality of food people are eating, particularly for individuals with chronic disease. We received many requests in the mental and behavioral health arena, and we are excited to see organizations discover how to better serve people's behavioral health needs, expand organizational services to include behavioral health options, and another promising example is recently we started to receive some requests to help organizations expand to offer teletherapy options. We also know that substance use disorder is currently an issue in need of a lot of funding support across our region. Our foundation recognizes that the type of support a person needs to succeed in recovery varies by person and may include things like medication-assisted treatment, abstinence-only support, working with a peer recovery worker, transportation to services, and getting connected to other healthcare. We have provided support to organizations that offer residential activities such as hiking and art therapy. We also are interested in supporting prevention programming and providing support to the loved ones of a person in recovery. We hope to receive more requests related to tobacco prevention and cessation programming. Our foundation is particularly interested in ways to address the youth vaping crisis we have seen emerge in recent years. We also think it's equally important for communities to have programs that help people who are ready to quit receive the strategies and support they need to be successful in addressing tobacco addiction, including workplace wellness programming. Other common categories of requests include chronic disease education and management programs, supportive services for victims of domestic violence or other traumatic events, programming directed at responding to the specific needs of certain populations like young children, pregnant women, or older adults. And of course, these are just some examples. I encourage everyone after this webinar to also spend some time on our website. The website has individual pages for health and wellness and capacity building, as well as the 4 core priorities, and they all provide additional background information and potential project topics that may help spark ideas of your own. You can also find under the Resources tab a listing of grants we have given out previously, which also may help with drafting your project ideas. But remember, what's on the website is certainly not an exhaustive list of project topics. We're open to all sorts of projects, and just because it isn't something we've funded before, it certainly doesn't mean we wouldn't do so now. If you have any questions, again, just ask. Now for the other category of funding requests we will accept, capacity building. People are often confused about what capacity building includes. It is definitely okay to be uncertain about whether a project is organizational capacity building or really a health and wellness programming project. One of the reasons our foundation opted to combine our previously separate capacity building and health and wellness funding initiatives into the single application cycle you see here today was to eliminate the confusion applicants were having about determining whether they were applying under the right cycle or not. So if you have a project you think might be a health and wellness programming capacity building hybrid, then it probably is, and it will fit fine under either or both prongs of our revised Healthy Communities initiative. So let me tell you a little bit about what comes to mind for me when I think about capacity building. I think of it as the things you do to build the health of your organization so that you have strong finances, leadership, and infrastructure. Capacity building funding is intended to help supplement your organization's budget for the types of expenses that are often the first line items to be cut in a tough budget year. And we recognize that this year is a tough budget year for almost all nonprofits, unfortunately. From my own past professional experience, I know the last thing you as a nonprofit leader ever want to cut is funding for direct services to your clients. So you'll eliminate professional development for you and your staff, put off purchasing new computers or updated software, or delay bringing in help to create that strategic plan that you really need. On the slide, you will see some of the most common types of capacity building. Additionally, here are some examples of projects we have funded. A local nonprofit requested and received funding for the purchase and installation of a new telecommunications system. The organization had been utilizing an outdated system that frequently dropped calls and caused difficulty in leaving and retrieving voicemail. The organization also struggled to identify who was even willing to service this very outdated system. These challenges obviously were causing frustration for staff, patients, and community partners, thus resulting in less responsive care and the redirection of staff time to troubleshooting issues. COVID-19 has provided many challenges for organizations, including the need to have employees work from remote locations effectively. We have helped several of our grantees purchase laptops so that staff could work safely and easily from home as needed. We also frequently fund professional development training for staff or costs for staff to complete specific job certifications. During the pandemic, we have seen many of our grantees emphasize completion of these types of trainings for their employees and take advantage of the many new opportunities for virtual learning. Okay, let's move on to budgets. Here are some examples of expenses we do not or generally will not provide funding for through this initiative. We provide these categories on the slide as a general guide, but we do reserve the right to not fund other types of expenses. As a relatively new foundation, we aren't ready to say we've seen it all just yet. Regarding major capital items, if you have a question about whether an item would be considered a major capital item, we're happy to talk through it with you. Some guidance to think about or a way to approach whether something is a capital item. If you are budgeting for an item, such as equipment, with a price tag for a single unit of the item that exceeds $2,500, our foundation most likely will consider it a capital item, but again, you are always welcome to check with us. Another note, we do not outright exclude on this list salary and benefit support for projects. However, our foundation typically does not fund salary and benefits. On the rare occasion, we may consider it as an allowable expense if it is a time-limited need directly tied to project operation. Now let's talk about designing your project budget. You will draft your budget in a separate document and then upload it into our grant management system. I'll show you more on where you do that a little later on. Our foundation is perhaps unique in that we do not provide a budget template. Our rationale in not providing one is that we know most of you apply for grants frequently and that each funder you encounter has a different format they would like you to provide budget information in. We hope that by not providing you with a budget form, you can provide the information in the format that makes the most sense to you and is simplest. In designing your budget, though, please keep the items on the slide in mind. You should be requesting funding from the foundation only for costs related to the project you are seeking funding for. Seeking funding from our foundation for. If you have other sources of funding for your project, we found it cleaner to not include these on your project budget, or if you would like to include them, please list them in a separate section. If you are requesting funding, as an example, for a board training, your project budget should be focused on the costs of hosting the training, printing of the handouts, the trainer's fee, maybe you need to purchase a projector, but the budget should not include unrelated items. For example, the office supplies for your accounting department. When drafting your budget, more detail is better than less detail. Break each type of expense out and place them under general categories like supplies, travel, consulting. It may be that under these general headers, you have more than one expense to list as well. Make sure in addition to the dollar amount for each expense, you include a brief explanation of its purpose. One last note, if you are requesting funding for multiple projects, again, please be sure you lay your budget out in a way that's clear which project each expense ties to, and also list the budget items in priority order. As I noted earlier, it is not uncommon for our foundation to partially fund requests, so it is helpful to be able to understand what projects and budget items are most needed. Here are a couple of examples. Say you're requesting funding to purchase a healthy recipes booklet for program clients. You might group that under supplies, and then would include the name of the booklet, how it will be used with clients, the unit number you intend to purchase, as well as the cost per unit. Another example, if you're requesting funding for food for a day camp for at-risk children, you might group that under a general category of hospitality, and you would provide the estimated number of children attending, the number of meals to be provided each day, the cost per meal, and the number of days of the camp. Once you are done drafting, please have somebody else double check it to ensure your math adds up and that your expense descriptions clearly explain how the expense relates to the project. Last thing, the dollar amount total on your budget document should match the amount of funding you are requesting from our foundation. Now I'd like to go over our evaluation criteria. In reviewing your proposal, our staff and board will keep the following 7 criteria in mind. First, there's mission fit. We're looking for proposals that present a genuine and pressing program need that aligns with the mission, vision, and values of our foundation. This is the first thing we look at when we review your proposal because it's the most critical thing to both our staff and our board. Proposal quality. Make sure your proposal contains all required elements and is well drafted. But note here, it's not uncommon after submission that our team will follow up with you to request more info or clarify something provided. That won't be held against you at all. Often these conversations are game changers in helping us better understand applications. What this evaluation element is more about is, does it look like the applicant tried their best to submit all the required information? Project quality. Very similar to proposal quality, project quality looks at, did the applicant make a good effort to tell the story of the proposed project? Is it explained clearly? Does it show an understanding of the issues? And is it related to at least one of the eligible focus areas for the Healthy Communities Initiative? So health and wellness or capacity building. Project implementation. Does the project timeline make sense? Is it attainable? And does it detail the steps, resources, and time required to execute the project? Budget feasibility. The funding level requested is reasonable and aligns with the project description. This refers to both the budget overall and also individual budget items. For example, sometimes we receive multiple requests for something like website development. If 4 applications have budget requests for this service that hover around $5,000, but your budget says $12,000, that's something that will likely cause our program team to follow up with you to ask more questions. Organizational capacity. There's a specific question on the application that asks about your organizational capacity. You may have a great project idea, but if your organization is not ready, for example, understaffed or in the middle of a leadership turnover, then maybe it's not the best time to add a new program. A note here too about new organizations or organizations that have never received a grant from any funder before. That's actually often okay and won't rule you out. We would be happy to be the first funder you work with. We just will probably want to talk the project through with you to make sure you are ready and that you haven't bitten off more than you can chew. And lastly, measurable goals. The application will ask you to draft goals and how you plan to measure your success. We'll evaluate them to see if they seem realistic and attainable, and whether the project has the potential to be sustained beyond the grant period. Before we move on to exploring our Foundant system, I wanted to quickly note that our foundation will have one more funding initiative available this fiscal year. Our foundation's fiscal year begins October 1st and ends September 30th. Our Core Priorities initiative will open in late April. Core Priorities projects are a chance for us to focus on 4 of the most compelling issues our region faces: substance use disorder, food insecurity, tobacco use prevention and cessation, and mental and behavioral health. The Core Priorities initiative is a 2-step application process using a letter of inquiry process prior to an applicant being asked to submit a full application. The RFP will be released and the letter of inquiry will become accessible on April 30th. The LOI deadline will be May 21 And then the most compelling LOI submissions will be invited to submit a full application due August 6th. The funding period for the Core Priorities Initiative grants will be October 1, 2021 to September 30th, 2023. Projects funded under the Core Priorities Initiative are typically more complex in design than Healthy Communities Initiative projects, and also have the potential to make a broad impact on at least one of the 4 focus areas that I noted above, and I should say one of the 4 core priorities noted above, often at the systems level. Successful applicants likely also will be grantees who have experience managing large-scale grants. We like to work closely with potential applicants to the Core Priorities Initiative about their project ideas. So if you think you have a project that has potential for a Core Priorities Initiative grant, please reach out as soon as possible to me or Janice Stoner. Now I want to pivot and introduce you to our grant management system, Foundant Technologies. Our foundation uses Foundant Technologies grant management system for all its grant applications, grant agreements, and grant reporting. We believe this system is extremely user-friendly and simple to navigate. Of course, we're here to help if you have problems. Once you decide you would like to apply for funding from the foundation, the first step is going to be to create an account for your organization. The link to begin that process is available here on this slide, and it's also available on our website. I am now going to run through a series of screenshots to walk you through establishing your account in Foundant. Once you click on the link from the previous slide, the first screen it will bring you to is this one. You'll notice on the right-hand side of the actual screenshot of the web page, there is a vertical gray box with a lot of information. One thing it mentions is that if someone in your organization has previously submitted an application to our foundation, or if you aren't sure but think someone might have, we would like you to contact our grants manager. Her name is Brooke Welch, and we'll share her contact information at the end of the presentation. Reaching out to Brooke, she can help you determine whether your organization has an existing account. At the bottom of the gray box, there is a listing of several audio and written tutorials you can consult to help familiarize yourself with the Foundant system. If you already have an account with our foundation, you'll skip the next few steps, and instead you will just log in here with your existing email address and password, and you'll be able to access the application. However, assuming you are new and wanting to create your account, you would then select the gray Create New Account box that is highlighted in red on the slide. After selecting Create New Account, you'll come to this screen where you will provide us with overall info about your organization. All the fields you see on this screen with asterisks next to their corresponding field header are required fields. You must provide information for these fields in order to continue on. Once you enter all the required information, hit the blue Next button in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. On the second screen, you will enter information about yourself as the person completing the grant application on behalf of the organization. Please provide your contact information as it relates to your organization, not your personal contact information. If your address is the same as your organization's address you entered on the previous slide, you can click the Copy Address from Organization button in the top left-hand corner, and it will autofill the corresponding boxes. The next screen asks if you, the person completing the application, also is the organization's Chief Executive Officer. If you click yes because you are the Executive Officer, the system will then ask you to provide just a couple additional fields of information about yourself. Note though, none of these fields are required and that some, like suffix and address to, may not even be applicable. If the executive officer of your organization is not the one completing the application, you will select no and then be prompted to enter information about your executive officer. Next, you'll create your own unique password. Like most systems, our Foundant system has password rules. Please keep those in mind as you are establishing your new password. After you enter your password, you will click the blue Create Account button, and your account will be created. You will then receive an email from the Foundant system saying that you have successfully created your account and can now log in. If you don't receive that email, please check your junk or spam folders, as sometimes these auto-generated emails get filtered incorrectly. Now that you have your login information established, you'll return to the main login page. You will enter your email address and password and select Log On to begin working in the application. And at this point, I'm going to pivot and actually pull the application up and walk you through the information that you will need to enter. As you can see, the next screen that you will come to after you log in is a screen that contains the 8 sections of the application. We group the questions into 8 groups. The first group is the eligibility criteria, but before we get that opened up, one thing I want to recommend is that you quickly take a few minutes to review the entire application before you get started. Just briefly scan to see what type of information you will be required to cover. This will hopefully give you a better sense of what will be collected across the application. Each of these groups, if you click on the gray bar, they expand and open up. If you want to collapse them back up, all you do is simply click the gray bar at the top again. So now let's talk about the first group, the eligibility criteria. Before we get into meaty questions of the application, we have some general eligibility information for you to review. The last thing we want is for a potential grantee to waste time on an application that doesn't fit our funding parameters. We reviewed most of these requirements earlier in the webinar, so I will not go over them again. You'll see there are 2 short attestation statements we ask you to complete, documenting you have reviewed the eligibility requirements and the grants, typical types of grants that our foundation does not fund. In the instructions section, we provide you with some basic application instructions. As you get ready to work on entering your application, remember, applicants may request funding for multiple projects in a single application. If you do request funding for multiple projects, most application questions will need you to provide information for each project. I will show you further along examples of how to spot a required question, an example of a question that includes a document upload, and where the character limits are noted on each question. The Fountain system allows you to work on the application in more than one sitting. So you can work on the application over a period of days or weeks. If you are working on the application over an extended period of time in a single session, please save your work often. The Save button is at the bottom of the application form. I encourage you to click the Save button frequently to ensure your responses are saved. Due to the fact that I'm showing you this walkthrough in preview mode and not the actual live application, the Save button is not on the screen for me to show you, but I promise you it will be there when you log in to work on the application yourself. We also list contact information for our foundation staff on this slide. Again, if you have questions about project ideas or budget and financial statement questions, you can contact me or my team member, Jana. If you have questions about getting registered in Foundant or using the Foundant system, you may contact our grants manager, Brooke Welch. One of the last slides in this webinar, again, like I mentioned earlier, will have our full contact information, so don't feel like you have to squint right now to scribble it down. Foundant also has a feature called Collaborator that you see at the very bottom of the screen share. That lets you work with a colleague on completing an application. We suspect it will be helpful for many of you, as we know a lot of our grant applications are the product of team efforts. If you are interested in using that feature, we recommend that you review the tutorial. You can also reach out to Brooke, who can answer any questions you may have about Collaborator. Moving on to our next group, Request Overview. This is a chance to provide our foundation with a high-level snapshot of your project request. The very first question, Organization Summary, is a required question. Note the asterisk next to Organization Summary. That signifies that it's a required question. In order for your application to successfully submit, text must be entered into the field box, or a document must be uploaded for every question that has an asterisk. And in fact, almost every question on the application is required, so you'll see that asterisk next to almost every question label. Also under the text box for the organization summary question, you see a long horizontal rectangle outlined in green. In that box, it says 500 characters, left of 500. 500 is the character limit on this particular question. You'll notice once you start typing in the box, the statement will be adjusted to indicate how many characters you have remaining to use. Every question in the application will either have a character limit box or a file size limitation box. The system will allow you to enter more text than the field can hold while you are working on a draft. However, once you hit submit, you will be alerted to the fields that exceed the character limits and will need to go back and make adjustments before the system will allow your submission to be processed. We do encourage you to be as concise as possible, and also know and remember that we frequently follow up with applicants after the submission deadline to ask additional questions. The organization and project description summary questions are intended to be really brief summaries of your organization and your project. There are questions later in the application where you will provide a more in-depth description of your project and more details about your organization. In between these two questions, you see there's a question that asks you to provide a name for your project. Also in this request overview section, there are two different questions that are collecting information about your project budget. The total funding request from the foundation question is where you will place the amount of funding you are requesting only from the Palatine Foundation. If you are requesting funding for multiple projects in your application, please be sure this is the overall total of projects you are asking our foundation to fund. The amount you entered here cannot exceed $50,000. The next item, total project cost, is where you will combine your amount requested from the Palatine Foundation with any other sources of funding for the project. The amount you enter in this box may exceed $50,000. If our foundation is the only planned source of income for the project, the amount you enter here will be identical to the amount you entered in the previous question. The project start and end date should be the specific planned start and end dates for your project. Your project may not start any earlier than June 1st, and it must end no later than May 31st, 2022. If you're applying for funding for multiple projects, please enter the earliest start date of all your projects and the final end date among all your projects. We also would like you to select the focus area you believe your project addresses. You may select more than one focus area. If you're not sure what focus area to select, maybe it's a project that falls into the hybrid category I mentioned earlier. Just select what you think is best and move on. For the principal location of organization question, list the city, county, and state where your organization is based. Although your organization does not need to be based in the foundation's region, it is helpful for us to understand where you are headquartered. Also, let us know the counties in the foundation's region that your project will operate in. Please do not include counties where your organization operates, but where you do not plan to operate these specific project services. The funding we provide, remember, cannot be used to support project services outside of our 20-county region. Okay. Now for the organizational background group. In this section, please tell us about your organization overall, including a brief history, your mission, and your current programs. We'd also like you to write about the alignment of your organization with our foundation's mission, vision, and values. Alignment is critically important to your project successfully being funded. Please be sure to review our mission, vision, and values as shared earlier on this presentation or on our website. And you can see where mission, vision, and values are blue. That means that they are hyperlinked, and if you click on them, that will take you to our website where you can read the full description of the mission, vision, and values. Now, we know that it would be virtually impossible, unfortunately, for an organization to have not felt at least some impact from the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. We have 2 questions on our application to help us better understand the experiences your organization has been having over the last year. The first question appears in this section and asks about the overall impact on your organization as a whole. The second question is focused on COVID's impact on the application you are completing for our foundation, and we'll get to that in the next group of questions. Note on this question, we provided some common examples of frequent issues we are hearing about from our grantees and community partners, but recognize you may have other impacts you would like to list. The Organization Board of Directors question is the first item you'll come to that allows you to upload a file. This question has a hybrid format. It asks you to answer questions about your board's operation and to provide a listing of board members. You can choose whether you want to upload a document, enter the information requested directly into the box, or upload a document and enter text. For the upload questions like this one that appear on the application, you can only upload one file. This may require you to combine multiple documents together to meet the single file upload requirement. You are able to upload a variety of file types. However, there are file size limitations that sometimes impact grantees' ability to upload documents. If you run into file size limitations or are having trouble combining your documents, please contact Brooke Welch to discuss whether it's appropriate to submit the items through an alternative method. The project information section, though, this is the longest section of the application, and it will be where you provide us with the detail on your planned project. The project description and statement of need question is where you get to tell us the nuts and bolts of what your project is about. In describing your project, we strongly encourage you to use the bulleted list as a checklist to ensure the project description you draft provides us with the most pertinent information. Remember, if you're requesting funding for multiple projects, we'll need you to provide complete information here for each project. Also, if you're requesting funding for multiple projects, please describe your projects in order of priority. Also, let us know for each project you're requesting funding for if it is a new project or a continuation of an existing project. If it is existing, we would really like for you to share any information about how things have gone so far and what project results have been. We have allowed you up to 10,000 characters to describe your project. This high character limit is really to accommodate applicants who are including information for multiple projects. We encourage you to be, as always, as concise as possible. Again, if we have more questions, we will follow up with you by email or give you a phone call after you submit your application to collect additional information. In the supporting documentation of need question, you have the opportunity to share any additional data or research related to the issues or challenges the project seeks to address. And also note, this is a question where you can upload or enter text. And also, this is one of very few questions on the application that is not required. So it's up to you whether you want to enter any information here. Now we're at the second COVID question that I mentioned. This one is focused on the actual project you're requesting funding for. It may be that the COVID-19 pandemic has no connection to the request you are making to our foundation, or it may be that the project you are requesting funding for is one you never would have envisioned a year ago before the onset of the pandemic. If COVID-19 has not impacted this request, just write NA. This is a required question, and our system requires some sort of text to be entered in the box. For the next question, key staff roles, organizations often just upload an organizational chart or submit lengthy staff bios. A lot of times this is more information than we actually need. What we are after here is who the key staff on the project are. Typically, this is only a handful of staff members. Then, just a brief summary of their background. Additionally, we'd like a short description of their experience, if any, working with the proposed project. The next question is about project goals and measurements. We have tried to keep this question simple, as we know it's often one of the most challenging pieces of a grant application. we would like you to provide us with a few goals, meaning things your organization plans to accomplish as a result of the project. For each of the goals, we'd also like you to provide us with a description of how you plan to measure whether the goal was successfully met. If you are struggling at all with this question or how to set up your project goals and measures, you are welcome to contact me or Jana for additional guidance. In crafting your project timeline, please make it clear how you plan to execute the project within that one-year time period. The clearest timelines we receive are ones that break the project down by calendar quarters, listing key milestones the applicant expects to achieve in the project rollout. We also understand that the timeline is an estimate and may not be in reality how exactly the project rolls out. If you are ultimately awarded funding for your project, the draft timeline will also be used as a benchmark for evaluating the project's progress on both the interim and final reports. We are always happy to see projects that take advantage of collaborative partnerships. If your project will include any collaborative aspects, please describe them to us. Collaboration is not required, but is strongly encouraged where it makes sense. You do not have to have a formal MOU or letter of support secured in order to list an organization as a collaborative partner. If you have collected any letters of commitment or memorandums of understanding, though, we would like to see copies of them, and you'll need to upload them here. Again, if you have multiple letters, you'll need to combine them into a single file to upload them. The organizational readiness question contains a series of sub-questions to help us assess whether your organization is ready to take on the project you're requesting funding for, and if you can do so in an efficient and effective manner. The last question in this group is about sustainability. We are sensitive to the fact that sustaining programming after the grant ends is often a challenge for nonprofit organizations. In your response to this question, we are hoping to understand the project's chances for sustainability, or for capacity of building projects, how the project may evolve or place your organization on more stable footing after the grant period concludes. And now we're at the financial information group. There are going to be a number of documents to upload in this group. Again, if you have any uncertainty about what to upload, you're always welcome to reach out to us. The first thing will be the project budget. And I talked about the project budget with lots of tips earlier on in the presentation, so I won't go through all these bullets again. But remember, here you can upload an Excel, Word, or PDF version of your project budget, whatever works best for you. We'll also ask you for an organizational annual budget for the current year. Please be sure that this organizational budget that you upload includes both your expected expenses and your expected revenues. In the past, we've had applicants only upload budgets that list expenses, so remember, it should also include revenues. For the next two questions, income statement and balance sheet, and we've listed some of the different names that we encounter that these two types of statements are sometimes called. But for these two questions, you're going to provide information in a similar way. Please provide these financial documents for both the current fiscal year and the preceding fiscal year. If your fiscal year, though, has just recently started, please instead provide documents for your last two fully completed fiscal years. Also make sure the uploaded income statement and balance sheet that they cover the same time period so that they tie together. Now for the audit report or financial review. If your organization has completed either an audit or a financial review, please submit your most current version. If you are submitting an audit report, please also include the management letter or auditor's notes if issued. Similarly, for a review, be sure to include the reviewer's notes if they were issued. If your organization does not conduct an audit, which we realize is not uncommon in very small nonprofits, please just enter NA. We would also like some information on your history as a grant recipient with other funders, as well as our own foundation. Please provide information on grants over $5,000 you have received in the last 2 completed fiscal years. The listing does not need to be just grants tied to the current project. We are interested in seeing any grants for any purpose your organization has received. You can either list them or upload a file. Please don't forget to list any funding you may have received from our foundation previously. You just need to give us a brief overview of each grant. If you have not received any grants, that's fine. Please enter none in the box. We also have some questions about other sources of support for the project. Please list any other funders that you've submitted a request to for funding to assist with this specific project being addressed in the application. And then if you have any other types of support that may be coming in for the project, such as in-kind donations and fundraisers, there's an opportunity to list them under any other support. Okay. So now we're almost done. When you get to the application, agreement, and electronic signature group, it's your chance to provide us with some feedback. We'd like you to tell us how you found out about the Healthy Communities Initiative and also let us know your experience completing the grant application. The feedback you provide here will help us improve future application cycles. You will then electronically sign your application, agree to its submission, and enter the submission date. At this point, your application is essentially done. In this final group, next steps, we just briefly share some information about what happens after you submit your application. It will let you know that once you submit your application, you cannot make changes to it. So be sure to look over your application one last time before submitting. If you run into a problem where you accidentally submit your application too soon or something develops after submission that is critical to adjust, you can contact our grants manager, Brooke Welch, and depending on the circumstances, we may be able to move your application back to draft status so that you can make changes to it. Also note the administrator@grantinterface.com email address, and if you can, add it to your email address book. All emails you receive from the foundation that come through the Foundant system will be sent from that email address. Typically, a lot of formal notifications, such as notification that you've been selected to receive an award. We don't want those important messages getting caught in your spam filter. Lastly, a reminder you will be notified about whether your project has been selected for funding by May 24th, 2021. After you complete your final review of the application, click the Submit button. You must submit the application by 11:45 on March 31st. I just want to emphasize that it's 11:45 and not 11:59. The system has a hard stop at 11:45. It is programmed to not accept any applications after 11:45. This completes the run-through of the application. I hope you found it to be beneficial. I'm now going to switch back to our PowerPoint for just a few wrap-up slides. Okay, so back to PowerPoint, and we're on the login slide where we left off. I did skip one step that I wanted to go back through with you all to be sure that you have the information that you need. And here's where it is. When you log in on this screen, and we went over this, the first screen that you will come to before you see the screen with the 8 groups that I just walked you through is actually the screen that says Apply at the top. So you can see in the upper right-hand corner where it has the red rectangle around the word Apply. If you hit Apply there, that will then bring you into where I was walking you through with the 8 different groups. So just wanted to clarify that, and I apologize for skipping over that earlier. All right, so here is the contact information slide I've been promising since the outset of the webinar. Again, want to emphasize there is no wrong door for reaching out to our foundation. We all work closely together. So if you're confused about who to ask what question about, you're welcome to reach out to any of the 3 of us. And then please call us by phone, send an email. It's whatever format you're most comfortable in reaching out to us to. But typically, again, questions about project ideas, your putting together your project budget, those are going to be best answered by Jana or myself. And then questions about getting started in Foundin, actually navigating the system, all that technical sort of stuff, you can reach out to Brooke. And with any luck, this will soon be you and your organization celebrating having just completed your grant application to the Healthy Communities Initiative. Appreciate you taking the time to work through this webinar with me. I hope you found it helpful and that it will assist you in developing a stronger application. Thank you and good luck.